Chapter 10, Sparks of the Shield. Stephen arrived in the living room with the whole Williams family together. He noticed Craig and Bryson sitting together, while the stump kid tried to participate in the reunion, but he wasn't helping himself. Okay, so how about we go outside and check out my garden from the backyard? Or were offered. Or we did that in our last reunion, where we watered them, Dwayne replied. You know they need water to live. About that, I've actually taken care of the gardening this morning, Jojo chimed in. I knew he wanted to do it again, so I've made the changes. We always celebrate here, what's the difference? Switching jobs? Darnell said. This caused Stephen to take action. Have you all ever thought of the idea of doing something new every once in a while? Technically we do, Kimberly walked up to Stephen. We did the Jessica and Small Uncle show when we learned she acted out in front of her brother for the first time. Everyone turned their attention to Craig and so did Stephen. You watch your sister's show? Yes, but let's just say I'm not a fan of it, Craig spoke quietly. Stephen then thought of an idea to do something similar to Jessica's idea for an activity. My parents always do that type of activity with me when I was the same height as Craig's. You mean age, not height, Nicole asked. Yes, every time at home. I always go on adventures with my parents to fight off creatures from distant places. The Williams family became confused at first. What show did you watch exactly? Bernard wondered. It wasn't a show, it was all imagination. Really, though, so many imaginative landscapes and people of two species, humans and gems. You made friends out of jewelry? Darnell asked. Seems like a glorified world in your childhood, Jasmine added. Craig took notice of Stephen's handling of this. He knew Stephen's personal life more than the truth came out when the truth came out about his three mothers and the gems who are his friends. If only he wished it would have turned out better yesterday, there would have been something to make up for his deeds. If you don't believe me, here's what my parents made for me. Stephen heads out the door and heads straight to his van. He opened the door from the other side, but he uses his powers to activate his shield. He shuts the door as he heads back to the house, entering the front door, taking everyone by surprise. Is that a shield? Jessica walked up to Stephen. It's beautiful. Yeah, that's a really great looking shield, Nicole commented. Looks like time really revolutionized shields. Errol added. The family walked up to Stephen, amazed at the design of his shield. However, the only ones who stayed in place are Craig and Bryson, who's in complete shock. Is this what you're talking about? Bryson leaned into his cousin. Yes, but the less said about that, the better, Craig whispered back. I have to admit, Stephen, your parents must have paid a fortune to make this. Jasmine felt his shield. Most shields don't have these accessories. You'll be surprised. These would be difficult to make with my parents, Stephen smiled. He then took a full advantage of his plan as he took everyone out in the backyard to showcase his shield. Craig and Bryson sit together, sitting behind the back door like last time, with their families watching in full view. Jasmine threw some beanbags at Stephen when he blocks them with his shield. With Jasmine changing her targets, Stephen single-handedly got into every spot to use his shield. Every time a beanbag hits his shield, small sparkles appear upon slight impacts. Am I seeing things, or did I just see sparks from his shield? Jojo looked closely. Bernard looked closer in his glasses. It looks like it. After the final beanbag impacted, Stephen turned to the Williams family, still strong without scratches. He showed his shield. Well, it's beanbags, not missiles, Dwayne added. Also, why were those sparkles on your shield? Errol pointed. Well, that's a good question, Stephen awkwardly grinned. But we would be here all day questioning logic, right? The Williams family blinked, while also giving awkward looks. Craig and Bryson, on the other hand, are catching on to what's going on. Our families don't understand cartoons unlike us, don't they? Bryson whispered. Not really, but if the cartoons are really real, the creek would have been different, Craig said. Stephen, are you sure you're telling the truth? Nicole asked. Mom, those sparkles are beautiful, Jessica jumped in joy. If I wasn't telling the truth, little girls like Jessica wouldn't want an essay of how shields work, Stephen smiled. Just like what I felt when I did social studies essays, Kimberly replied. Nicole looked down at Jessica while looking back at Stephen's shield. Seems like a wireless feature. There's no buttons on this shield, Bernard taking notice. Jessica, come on up. You can play with me, Stephen called as Jessica walked up. He then notices Craig and Bryson and points at them. Craig, Bryson, come on up here. Craig and Bryson took notice from Stephen's voice. Craig may not have his staff, but it doesn't change the fact he's too depressed. Bryson might play, but his cousin isn't in the mood, Donnell added. I'm not gonna be here after today. It wouldn't be as fun without him. Stephen walked past the family while leaning down to Craig. Craig, we can at least play together. You do that, right? Don't you think you're kind of pushing it? Craig asked. I'm not big enough to use your shield. As Stephen turned his attention to Bryson, he agreed with Craig. So do I. You'll be surprised. Just walk with me. He stood up while turning back to the family. Can I go inside for a minute? Sure, Jojo smiled. Stephen heads inside while quickly heading to the living room. He uses his powers as his shield glows, shortening it down to the size for kids to carry. He then hurried back outside from the back, surprising everyone. I've made the shield much smaller so Craig and Bryson can use it. Don't forget about me, Jessica called. Okay, I'll give it a try, Bryson staying up while he pulled his cousin up. At least make the best out of it. I'll see what I can do. Craig signed while Stephen followed behind. Upon heading back to the backyard, Stephen handed his shield to Jessica as he headed to the other side. Upon receiving beanbags from Jasmine with Craig and Bryson by his side, he lightly throws them to Jessica as she blocks them with the shield. I can see the beanbags through the shield, Jessica cheered. It's so stylized. Just keep your attention on me more than the shield, Stephen called. As Stephen continued, Bernard took notice of the shield for every beanbag it impacted on it. The sparks felt real and had no toy effects on the shield itself. Upon 2 days knowing Stephen personally, he may know what Craig felt last night. After throwing the last beanbag, Jessica gave the shield to Bryson, who his turn being next. Bryson lifted the shield up as Stephen threw the beanbags. Bryson moved while Stephen changed his targets, reaching to every spot that impacted on the shield. This shield's definitely one of a kind, Bryson commented. Did it ever get any scratches? Nope. Stephen threw another beanbag, even during my childhood. Craig rolled his eyes unsatisfied. The final beanbag hit the shield as Bryson walked up to his cousin. Stephen looked at the way Craig held onto his shield, and he didn't forget the way he touched it last night. He felt even less impressed knowing how all this isn't fake. Craig, Bernard placing his hand on his hip, go back over there and please use his shield. Don't you mean play with his shield? Nicole wondered. Yeah, Bernard shook his head. As Quake went into position, he lifted his shield up while signing again. Just when Steven's about to throw his beanbag, he then comes up with an idea to cheer Quake up. Bryson, why don't you throw the beanbags? He handed them to Bryson. I'm gonna help out Quake. Okay. Bryson replied while carrying the beanbags. Steven went behind Quake as he leaned down, whispering in his ear. I know you're down, but even when I'm leaving, I'm not leaving you empty-headed. What do you mean? Quake whispered back. As Steven looked at Quake's family, he pointed up at the sky. Look, a phoenix! The family turned around up in the sky as he grabbed Quake from his shoulder. He licked his finger while inserting it in Quake's earplug. Ugh, Steven! Just when Quake was about to react in frustration, he felt sparkles in his body. But then Bernard took notice as he saw his brother shaking. He witnessed sparkles, similar to how the shield reacted, as if what Quake behaved yesterday wasn't part of any imagination. I don't see any phoenix, Kimberly replied. Oh, my bad, it must have been a red bird flying past. Quake's eyesight became magical while his body felt no emotion. As he looked at Bryson, he then smiled while lifting the shield up. Give me everything you got, he cheered. Alright then, Bryson smiled as he threw the first beanbag. Quake holds onto the shield real tight. He uses it to bash the beanbag, causing Bryson to dodge it in the nick of time. Wow, that beanbag really bounced back. Quake took notice. Make sure you don't hit hard, Steven replied. Bryson threw more beanbags at his cousin in different directions as Quake moved and hit the beanbags repeatedly. Soon he did cartwheels upon landing in spots to hit more beanbags. The family was speechless from the way Quake did gymnastics, but Bernard knew he wasn't capable of doing that. After one more beanbag being thrown, Quake hit it one last time as Bernard grabbed it, satisfied with his cousin's happiness. That was awesome, Quake smiled. My body had never felt so alive. Steven then lifted Quake up from the ground while placing him on his shoulders. Quake is definitely the shield apprentice, alright. He turned to the family as they applauded. I don't know how it's possible for beanbags to be launched back, but I'm not complaining, Dwayne commented. And it's wonderful that Quake is back in a good mood for a family reunion, Nicole smiled. With Steven and Quake smiling at each other, Bernard, on the other hand, didn't clap. In fact, he can tell something isn't right with Quake at all. After the past 2 days he spent with him, his curiosity started to get the better of him, just like his brother.